بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين اذهب الله عنهم الرجساه وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Our series of discussions go into a seventh night. Yesterday we were looking at the necessity of brotherhood, of being one, of collectivity. Look, there's a difference between knowledge and ma'rifah. You find that for as much as a person learns, reads books, it doesn't necessarily mean that their ma'rifah increases. If it was just about reading books, then you'd find that maybe shaitan would have had the most ma'rifah. Somebody who's seen from Alam and Nur all the way to the last 1400 years, and even before that. It doesn't necessarily mean, therefore, that the more a person reads, the more they know. In fact, ma'rifah is like a light that shines in the hearts of the people. As the sixth Imam said in the hadith of Unwan al-Basri, he says, إِنَّمَا هُوَ نُورٌ يَقْذِفُهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ مَن يَشَاءُ. There's a light, true knowledge, ma'rifah is a light. It shines in the hearts of people. When that light increases, your ma'rifah increases. The way to gain ma'rifah is different. And therefore there's always a difference between knowledge and ma'rifah. What's the difference, if you ask? The reply is very simple. If you look at this, if you look, for example, lying being haram. People know lying is haram, but they still lie. Why? Because they have knowledge lying is haram, they don't have ma'rifah lying is haram. When a person gains ma'rifah, they stop sinning. And the more ma'rifah increases, the more you find that sinning stops. This is why Imam Ma'asum is somebody who has ma'rifat of Allah. The reason being is because he becomes ma'asum, or he is ma'asum, and hence he doesn't sin. His ma'rifah of everything. See, people always ask the question, if the Imam wanted to, the Imam could do whatever they want to do. The difference is this though, the level of ma'rifah intellect is so high that they don't sin. In this way, what are those things that inspire a person's ma'rifah to increase? That's what's important. As we say, it's not just reading books. Of course, reading books is important. To know the seerah of the Imam is important. To understand is important. And as they say, utlubul ilm walau bis-sin, even if you have to go to China, go to China. Go and learn. But the fact of the matter is this, there's something that needs to open up in the heart. That only comes through certain means. When a person goes to the religious seminary, if his or her aim is only and only these books, then they've sold themselves short. This is a wasila to get towards that ma'rifah, get towards Allah. Your prayers is a wasila to get to Allah. It's wajib, you have to pray. But the fact is, through these prayers, it's a wasila. The prayers on the end, it's the beginning of a journey. That's what defines it. So look, three things I'm going to mention before I come on to the practical steps. There was a great scholar by the name of Sheikh Murtada Ha'iri, the son of Ayatollah Abdul Karim Ha'iri, who was the founder of Qom. One of the things about him was that whatever opportunity he got, he would go to he would go to Mashhad in the olden days. Whatever opportunity he got, he was ashik of the eighth Imam. That whatever opportunity he had, he would go there. He would go to ziyarah. For him, if you take all of the 14 ma'sumeens, consolidate them into one person, it was the eighth Imam, Imam al-Rauf. So whatever opportunity he had, from Qom he would travel all the way to Mashhad, whatever opportunity he got. The purpose of which, because for him all of the Imams were manifesta. And whose son is he? Sheikh Abdul Karim Hairi, the founder of the house in Qom. So they say that one day he went to Mashhad and he got there in the early hours of the morning, night travel, got there in the early hours of the morning. And he was excited to go and see his Mawla. When he got up and he went in the morning, he was in his zone as it is. As he was in his zone and he was going towards the shrine of the 8th Imam, a man came and said salam to him, wanted to greet him, wanted to meet him. Sheikh Murtaza Hairi ignored him and he just kept on walking, because he knew that if I entertain him, my hal with the Imam is going to go. My state of being, that connection is going to go. As he begins to walk, after ignoring him and he was walking, as he begins to go, another man comes towards him. He recognized him as one of the wali of Allah. This wali of Allah comes to him and says, Sheikh Murtaza, the 8th Imam says, go back, you've not been invited. Sheikh Murtaza Hairi gets worried. He turns around. He goes back. On the boundaries, he gives a salam to the Imam, but he's worried. Why is the Imam rejected me for? Why is the Imam rejected me for? And he begins to think. He says, the only thing it could be is that I rejected this person when he came to say salam to me. Now imagine, the only reason Sheikh Murtaza Hairi rejected him wasn't because of any sinister reasons. The main reason was this: the fact that he didn't want to lose his hal. You know, sometimes people, you're in a zone, somebody comes, they distract you, right? They come and distract you. Here he repents. He sits there and says, Mawla, if it's because of that, please forgive me. And he thinks to himself, well, if Mawla hasn't invited me to come, I'm going to go. So he says, before I go, let me do tawaf of the shrine of the Imam from the outside if the Imam hasn't allowed me to come inside. And as he starts to do tawaf, the same Arif comes to him, Waliullah comes to him and he says, Sheikh Murtaza, the Imam is now calling you. Immediately that's a lesson. Listen, there's a right that other believers have over you. If we understood that today, the world would have been a better place. If just entertaining a person or not entertaining a person holds so much in the eyes of the Imam, then imagine what you and I are doing on a daily basis. You see, what the Imam wants from us is compassion, kindness. You recite a salawat and come forward. You can come far forward, because I know people are going to be trickling in, and if they don't find space, they'll come cut all of your attention or divert. So if you can come as far forward as possible, please. Recite another salawat, please. Therefore, the right of the believer is something which is important, which is destroying our a'mal today, in the way that we engage with one another, in the way that we interact with one another. And you find that it's particular in Akhir al-Zaman. We haven't even got to the second yet. We've only the last 3 nights been looking at the first one. Here Ibn Tawus, when he puts the narration forward about the state of the Shia, he says the Shias will be divided. They'll be fighting amongst each other. There'll be public discord over politics and ideology and so forth. Here the Imam wants, even if you have difference, there needs to be a way of moving with that difference in a way that it doesn't lead to disunity, it doesn't lead to disrespect. As we said yesterday, if you want somebody to enjoin in the good and you want to help them to forbid the evil, the way of doing it is not disrespecting them. The way is through love. And if a person isn't doing it through love, then there's a problem there. Whenever you see a person target another and there's no love involved in that, then immediately remember this is amalul shaitan. Immediately remember this. Because if a believer is truly a believer, they put their own emotions behind. And you'll see, those people who generally target is because they've got something in their heart against that person anyway. I'll give you a story. There was a man who was a believer. He had 2 relatives that he disliked. For whatever reason, sometimes your heart doesn't gel with another person. He would come to the majlis of Imam Hussein and completely ignore them, completely disrespect them. In the sense he would ignore them. He says, one day, an alim came to him and said to him, are you following your nafs, you following the Imam? He said, that night I went home and I thought about it. What I thought about was this, That am I truly disliking this person for the sake of Zahra? Because they seem to be azadar, they seem to come to the majlis, they seem to cry over Imam Hussein. Not everyone's nasib is that they cry over Imam Hussein. If they're crying over Imam Hussein, it means they have some light inside of them. If they're coming to the majlis of Imam Hussein, it means they have some light inside of them. If they're going on the ziyarah of Imam Hussein, it means that there's some light inside of them. If Ahlul Bayt can call them, why am I then having this negativity towards them? He says, I repented and I changed. That evening when I went, I opened my eyes to these two people. Automatically I found that in my heart, my ma'rifat of my imam began to increase. So sometimes it's very simple, but sometimes we fall short. We don't realize what the haqiqah is. Look, that's the second thing. Third thing, I'm coming quickly because look, I want to put forward everything that I want to close this particular chapter. I want to move on to the second one. You've all heard of a companion of the seventh Imam by the name of Ali ibn Yaqtin. Well, Ali ibn Yaqtin was the Imam's person in the Taghuti government, which automatically tells you that it doesn't matter what government it is. So this is the extreme. Harun Rashid's was the extreme. Taghuti government, Imam's representative there. Obviously he was in Taqiyya, but he was still the Imam's representative. This tells you that there is no issue whatsoever in engaging in any form of, or any government of politics. If you can do good for some people, then do so. Ali ibn Yaqtin was there. Imam calls him. He says, I want you to go into politics. I will guarantee you 3 things as long as you help those people who are oppressed. As long as you help the good people. I said, Mullah, what are those 3 things? He said, the first thing is this: you'll never see poverty. I guarantee Musa ibn Ja'far. First thing, you'll never see poverty. Secondly, you'll be free from the pressure of Harun Rashid. Thirdly, you'll be free from the sword of Harun Rashid. Now you go and you help as many people as you can. That tells you something. That tells you that engaging in politics here for the Imam was important. And if you look at the system of the Imams, so as we mentioned, now that I'm on this, because I mentioned it on the second night, I said I'd complete it, I never got the opportunity. Look, let me explain this. If you look at the methodology of the Imams, from the 4th Imam all the way to the 11th Imam, so as you saw, the Tawabin movement takes place, Imams remain quiet. Ransacking of Mecca takes place, the Imams remain quiet. If you could recite a salawat and come forward again. The Wabin movement takes place, Imam stays quiet. The rise of Mukhtar takes place. It's through Muhammad Hanafiya, through Mukhtar, Imam stays quiet. Ransacking of Mecca and Medina takes place, Imam stays quiet. Question is this: why hasn't he stood up against dhulm? He's the son of Imam Hussein. If it was some of our Shia in those days, they would have been criticizing the Imam. Why? Because of their short-sightedness. You know what standing up for dhulm means? In essence, either you're able to protect the madhloom from the zalim, or you are able to influence the heart of the people so that they realize themselves. Right? So bear this in mind. That's the milak. Either you're able to stop it, or you're able to change the heart of the people. There's no third option. Right? So keep this in mind, because I'm going to come back to this. So remember, either you're able to stop the zalim and help the madhloom in that way, or you're able to awaken the hearts of the people so that they change the situation. 4th Imam doesn't do anything. 5th Imam's time comes. 5th Imam's time, Nafs Zakiyya comes. The rise of Idris comes. Abdullah Ma'ath comes. Right? And there are various uprisings of the Hassani Sayyids that take place. Ahlul Bayt are rising under the name of the Hassani Sayyids. 5th Imam remains quiet. He doesn't do anything. 6th Imam's time comes. Again there's an uprising. Imam stays quiet. You have the incident of Fakh, you have the incident of Zanj, you have multiple different incidences that takes place. Imams remain quiet. 7th Imam takes place. Again there's an uprising, Waqifi uprising. Imam stays quiet. There's another Zaydi uprising. Imam stays quiet. There's another Zaydi uprising. Again Imam stays quiet. 8th Imams comes into place. 2 uprisings. Again the Imams remain quiet. What are the uprisings? Against dhulm. As if Imam doesn't know. Imam stays quiet. 9th Imam, 10th Imam, 11th Imam. Uprisings are taking place under the auspices of the Shia, whether it's Zaydi, whether it's Ismaili and others. Imams are remaining quiet. Don't they know it's wajib to stand up against dhulm and oppression? No. The methodology of the Imam you've got to understand. Remember what I said at the beginning. Either you're able to influence the situation or you're able to wake the hearts of the people. What is the Imam therefore doing? Imams are institutionalizing 3 different methods, right, in their time, from the 4th Imam to the 11th Imam. One of those institutions, for example, is education. To educate the people is to raise their consciousness up. Otherwise, if the people are jahil, they don't know what they're doing. In the way that today you find some juhala today, right? Something takes place, they think it's wajib for them to shout or whatever they say. In fact, imagine, God forbid, it doesn't happen here, but there's parts of the world, people look at this zulm happening, all right, let's go and pelt stones at an embassy. What have you done? You're already seen as barbaric. You've done a barbaric action. You've got 2 wrongs, don't make a right. And then the whole country thinks that you're a bunch of idiots, sorry to say. What have you done? Counterproductive. So therefore, you haven't stopped a madhloom from being oppressed, nor have you changed the consciousness of people. Hence, it's counterproductive. When Amir al-Mu'mineen says, stand up for the madhloom, Imam is teaching us how to do that. The first thing is this: change the mentality of the people by educating them. Secondly, so what the Imams are doing is that they're establishing a network that people are in politics, in the political system. If you look at from the time of the beginning of the Abbasis all the way to the 11th Imam and Ghaybat al-Sughra, 3 of the Nawab Arba, their families were in the political system. In fact, if you look at Hussein bin Ruh's family, they actually took one of the Khalifa's off his position. In essence, they created a political intrigue to topple the Khalifa. So what does that tell you? Our methodology is to work in the system to help people, not outside of the system. It isn't a Zaydi system of revolution, as they say. It's not like that. If you look at the entire history of Shias, and you may ask, you may say, okay, what about Iran, for example? Well, then 99% were Shias anyway. The example is not even the same. Firstly, you don't live, for example, there's no majority. Even in those days, when there was a majority Muslim dynasty, even then the Imam didn't believe in forceful uprising. What the Imam believed, if you look at all of the Imams, there's no example of a forced uprising. It was to work within the system to change the system. If there was oppression in the system, they would work with it to change it, for example. They would show kindness, they would show compassion. Hence you have the likes of Ali ibn Yaqtins and so forth. Hence you have the Nubakhti family, for example. Hence you have many of the ulama families of the time. Hence you have the governor of Basra who was a Shia. Hence you have the governor of Khorasan who was a Shia. Hence if you look at the places in Anatolia, there were Shia people in there within the system. And the Abbasis knew about this, right? But they had a partnership. Certain times, okay, Mutawakkil may have been an oppressor, Abu Abbas Safa may have been, for Mansur al-Dawaniki may have been, but the Imams had a system in place. Imam weren't there just to disrupt the system. Imam were there to work with the people. Why? Because the last thing that you want is the face of Shiism to be defaced by actions which are non-ma'qul actions. So that's the first thing. So for example, if your community today does go and speak to the mayor, I heard, as you do, and other things like, it's important. You need to get along with communities. If you're inviting different people from different religions, for example, we've seen, and as every day, Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat come here. The other day the Ismailis were here. Some days the Bohris come. It's a good thing. They're coming here, they're commemorating with you. You're inviting people in. That's how you live as a community, right? If tomorrow the Jews, Christians, atheists, Hindus, whoever come, it's a good thing that they're coming because they see that there's a positivity there. Your neighbors, you'll go to them, they'll come to you. This is how you live in a society. You're showing people that the followers of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq are peaceful people. That's the most important thing. So bear this in mind. The way that Shiism has been, if you look, go back to Sayyid Murtada and see. Look, if I had time, and my subject is not politics, but from the time of Sayyid Murtada, Sheikh Mufid Sayyid Murtada was the Sheikh al-Taif of the Shia community. These guys were all engaged in the political system. They were working with the Khulafa of the time to the extent that you notice even under the Safavi dynasty. Shah Abbas al-Safavi is the king. Working parallel with the Shah of Iran was the ulama, for example. Ulama of Jabal Amal came, Sheikh Bahai was there, right? For example, you had Mir Findirsky there, Mir Damad there, After that, even Muqaddas al-Dabili, and etc., and etc., and etc. So there's an entire history of working parallel. Unless, of course, if huge tyranny takes place. That's a different matter. And even then, when huge tyranny was, the Imams changed their tactics to protect their Shia. One of them was political, right? Engagement in the political system. The other one was financial empowerment. If you look at the Shia, the network that was created up to Ghaybat al-Sughra was a network of financially empowering the Shia. So there were networks where huge amounts of finances were being transported. And this is why the Abbasis were trying to find this network of the Imams to cut that network. They were never able to do so. The leak, however, came. So when the 7th Imam was arrested, the leak was actually through certain branches of Zaydism who had infiltrated the Athna Sharia and then gone and exposed the Imams. So look at your history and see. Just because of a modern day history, don't forget what happened in the past. Right? So there's been always infiltration. And that's how the exposure has come. But the Imams developed this system of wakala and this system, this network of finances that were they able to take care of the needs of the Shia. They were able to resolve their issues. And it's always been there. That tells you that the Shia community in hindsight should be a financially empowered community. Which today, if you look at it, we're not, the entire community is not. There's segments of the community which are. There are segments of the community, but the community at large are not financially empowered. The system is not there. If, for example, as I said a couple of nights ago, if a student is in trouble, we should have the means to be able to help them. In fact, we should be having the means to help any Shia who comes who has some issue or shortfall in their finances. Not taking the mick, for example, but whatever their need is. If their need is $100, we're not saying give them 1,000, but make sure their need of that $100 is fulfilled. That was the purpose of Khums money, and this is why the emphasis was to invest it in your own area, to be able to help your own Shia of your mantiqa or your area, right? So look, I don't want to go too much into it, because that's not my topic. The politics isn't. As I'd raised this a couple of days ago, I wanted to conclude. The third thing of the Imam, so that's the first. Second, so the political, the financial, the educational empowerment, all of these things are important. But at the same time, the fact that the Imams were open to everyone, it didn't matter whether you were a follower of the Imam or not. You could be Abu Hanifa and come, but still the Imam would teach you. You could be a scientist not from Islam, but the Imam would still teach you. So the idea of compassion, the idea of raising the intellect and the spiritual well-being of people was as important. So look, that to one side, because our time is limited. Now let me come quickly for the third thing and finish this, so we can finish this chapter quickly. Third thing, as I said, was Ali ibn Yaqtin. Imam guaranteed him three things. He says, but by me guaranteeing you these three things, you've got to help those people who are impoverished. You've got to help those people who are oppressed. They say one day, and Ali ibn Yaqtin was a person where you'd find that the 7th Imam would pray for him in Arafah. He was one of the first people that an Imam would pray for. Imagine the status of Ali ibn Yaqtin. One day Ali ibn Yaqtin goes onto Hajj. After finishing Hajj, because remember he's based in Kufa, the capital of the Abbasi dynasty, goes to Mecca, goes on Hajj. Finishing his Hajj, he wants to go to Medina to meet the 7th Imam. When he comes to Medina, the Imam refuses to see him. Khadim comes out, he says, go, Imam doesn't want to see you. He says, have you told the Imam is the Wazir Ali ibn Yaqtin? He says, yes, Imam doesn't want to see you. Ali ibn Yaqtin is now completely, it's like the floor under his feet had been taken away, the earth under his feet. Now he doesn't know what to do. Why? Because he has ma'rifat of the Imam. He knows if the Imam is upset with me, everything is finished. He waits for that time to come when the Imam walks out of his house. He says, Mawla, what khata have I done? He says that you turned away one of my Shias, Ibrahim Jamal. One day Ibrahim Jamal had come towards the Imam, towards Ali ibn Yaqtin. Ali ibn Yaqtin, for whatever reason, he must have been under stress or pressure, because it's not like Ali ibn Yaqtin to turn anybody away. At that moment, Ali ibn Yaqtin really didn't give him any service. Mentally, he was tired. All the pressures of the Abbasi Khilafah was on his shoulders. Here, but Mawla says, my needy Shia came to you. You turned him away. He says, Mawla, what do I need to do? He says, I need you to go and repent, ask his forgiveness, and then come back. He says, but Mawla, Kufa is far away. How do I get to Kufa and come back? Mawla says, don't worry about it. There's a horse waiting outside for you. You get on that horse, you'll see you'll get to Kufa. Imam has even given him the option. Imam makes it easy for him to go. Therefore, that means something. When it comes for your heart to seek forgiveness, Allah makes it easy for you. Gets on the horse. Remember this. If you've ever wronged a brother, the solution is in your heart. Very quickly you can come to a solution. He rides on the horse, within seconds he's in Kufa. He goes to the house of Ibrahim Jamal. It was nighttime. He knocks on the door. A reply comes. Who is it? Ali ibn Yaqtin says, Ali ibn Yaqtin, the wazir. He says, what are you doing here? He says, please open your door. He opens his door. Ibrahim Jamal is standing there. Ali ibn Yaqtin says, I went to the khidmah of the seventh Imam. The seventh Imam said to me, I wronged you. He says, I've come here to ask for apology. He goes, Ghafarallahu lak. Allah forgive you. He says, no, that's not the way I want. He says, how do you want it then? He says, I'm going to put my head on the floor. You're going to put your foot on my face. And then he goes, listen, brother, you don't need to do this. He says, no, I need to do this. I need to make sure that you've forgiven me. And the only way I can make sure is if I put my face on the ground and you put your foot on my face. Ibrahim Jamal didn't want to do this. He was saying, listen, this is like insulting a believer. I don't want to. He says, I want you to do this. He puts his head on the ground. Ibrahim Jamal puts his feet on his face. He says, now I'm content that you've forgiven me. Comes back to Medina. The tradition says the seventh Imam opens his door up. He says, come inside. Please come inside. Please come inside. Why Imam's tone has changed? For one reason. Why? Because you've mended the heart of a believer. Now imagine how important it is, the heart of a believer. How many times in a week, in a day, in a month do we break the heart? And inshallah none of you do. But there are people who go and they break the heart of a believer. They break the heart of a believer. When they have a problem with them, they make the believer into shimmer. Then everything becomes halal. But bear this in mind. If they're coming to the majlis of Imam Hussein, you don't have the haqq to say anything. You don't have the haqq to insult them. Let's say even, for example, if there is an issue, if they've taken something of yours that they shouldn't have taken, if they've insulted you, there are ways of mitigating it without that coming into the public. And there's a way of dealing with it with akhlaq. You can always go to a person or have somebody mediate with akhlaq to resolve the issue. So look, that all to one side. One of the things I said in Akhir Zaman was that, you know the second thing is, so there are 5 things. The second thing is this. The second thing Ibn Ta'us says is that when you find pseudo-ulama coming onto the mimbar. Now what does it mean by pseudo-ulama? Those ulama who are only worried about their likes, who are only worried about their popularity, who are only worried about their pockets. Look, had it not been mentioned, I wouldn't mention it to you. Honestly, I wouldn't. Remember, in that time where you find individuals come on the mimbar, they talk about everything but Ahlul Bayt. You'll see this. And they take people far away from Ahlul Bayt. The true ulama of Akhir Zaman are those people who waken the hearts of the believer towards Ahlul Bayt. Bear this in mind. You'll find certain people, forget fadail. They don't discuss fadail. There's no masail. There's no fadail. All they're talking about are random things, which may be okay. But the bottom line is this: the duty of the ulama of Ahlul Bayt is to bring the believers to the door of the Ahlul Bayt. It isn't about likes. It isn't about popularity. It isn't about somebody's pockets. It isn't about how many people come to my majlis. It isn't about showing off. None of those things. If an alim becomes an alim of the dunya, then the entire community collapses. Why is that? Because the mimbar has asrat. If a person who's a fasiq, for example, or a person, okay, forget fasiq, but if a person whose entire talab is with the dunya, and they come and they spread that, spiritually they're able to infect the whole community. If a person's akhlaq is in there, spiritually they're able to infect a community. If a person, for example, their entire day and night consists of dunya, you find that then spiritually they're able to infect a community. So in this way, if you look back to the old ulama of the olden days, for them even an alim to go and eat in a restaurant was a big issue. Maybe they might start promoting dunya, for example. So in the olden days you find ulama didn't go to restaurants. didn't have televisions, and all sorts of restrictions were there. Okay, it's not there anymore, but you can see the philosophy behind why it was. The philosophy was just this: to keep yourself pure enough that when you come in front of a person, you're able to influence them by your own spirituality. That was the most important thing. Look, I've seen myself. Some of the great ulama, I've seen myself. They don't need to dictate to a person, brother do this or sister do that. Just their presence in a household is sufficient for them to spiritually influence a person to pray and a person to... I've seen this. In the olden days, there used to be some great scholars used to come. They never turned around to a person and forced him to pray. Their wujud was such that it made people pray, made people to fast. Why? Because the fact that they were amali. I remember myself, I've been in front of the presence of certain ulama who inspire you to go and pray, inspire you to do tahajjud, increase the wilaya of Ahlul Bayt. You want to come out and say, Ya Ali. Spiritual impact. This is why some of the ulama would say, they said after Saddam had kicked out Ahl Najaf, whenever they wanted to do ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they would go to do ziyarah of Ayatollah Abdul Karim Kashmiri. His entire wujud was like the haram of the Imam alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Right? Lift yourself up, make yourself so lofty that people look at you and they remember Allah. This is why Alim al-Rabbani is important. The hadith says the heart dies if in 40 days you don't visit Alim al-Rabbani. And the heart dies. Slowly it starts, and you know what happens when the heart begins to die? Tawfiq is taken away from you. When the tawfiq is taken away from you, what do you feel? Like people say, I don't have the hal. You don't pray tahajjud, I don't have the hal. You don't pray salah or wala, I don't have the hal. I don't have the hal to go to a majlis, I feel lazy today. Right? Today there's some people who are traveling 40 minutes from one majlis to the other. It's because Allah has given you tawfiq. It's because Imam Hussein loves you. That's why you're doing this. There's people sitting at home. 5-minute drive. Inshallah there's not. But let's say they are. 5-minute drive from here. They can't be bothered to come. Why? I can't be bothered to go today. Let me just rest today. I'll go tomorrow. Why no tawfiq? Why isn't there any tawfiq? Because the heart has been jammed. Because darkness is on their heart. There's no light there. Why isn't there any light there? Why isn't there any tawfiq? How do you build tawfiq? Let me come to that quickly. Look, I mentioned Sayyid Musa Zarabadi yesterday. I may not even have time to go into him today. But what I will do is I'll mention one thing that inshallah, hopefully if you apply it, it may benefit you. If you could recite a salawat, please. Fix the mic. The mic is not fixed. If you could recite another salawat, please. And if you could move slightly forward as well, just because people are now packing in and the spaces are diminishing. If you could recite another salawat and move slightly forward. Look, we discussed a person by the name of Ja'far Mujtahidi, right, if you remember. We discussed a person by the name of Ja'far Mujtahidi, right. A person who was one of the awtad of the Imam. When he was younger, they say one of the great awliya of Allah, when he was younger, maybe in his teens, one of the great awliya of Allah, whose name was Mullah Agha Jan Zanjani, the old ulama, the olden days. He says, I saw in a mukashif, I saw in a vision, that I was instructed by Ahlul Bayt to go and find this guy by the name of Ja'far al-Mujtahidi. He says, I went and I found him. And for a week I took him away and I transferred the ma'rifah that I had, the nur that I had in him. Right? This is something that happens. Some ulama are able to transfer. I'll give you an example. One day Sayyid Abdul Karim Kashmiri is playing football. He's only 9, 10, 11 years old in the streets of Najaf and Kufa. He says that one day I saw a 14-year-old boy come to me. His name was Muhammad Taqi Bahjat. He came to me and he said, "Son, this is not for you. Come to my teacher." Who said Ali Qadi. 14-year-old Bahjat was already a student of Qadi at the age of 14. This is why they say in his entire life he never committed any sins. Because from the day he was baligh, he was destined to go at a height. He says he takes Abdul Karim Kashmiri, and for 3 days he sits with him. And they say, Abdul Karim Kashmiri would say that I was young, I was sitting there. Ayatollah Bahjat for 45 minutes wouldn't say anything. He would do this. He would hold his back, he would put his head down, as if he was in a state of ruku, to the extent that I could see his head from the top. And he would transfer into me a nur. Quiet for 45 minutes, not saying anything, but when that nur transferred into me, after a week, then I was ready to go to somebody like Sayyid Ali Qadi, to be able to benefit from him. That tells you that light isn't transferred through the tongue. What is transferred is nur. So here Agha Jan Zanjani he says that I transferred what I had because Ahlul Bayt had asked me to transfer that to this Ja'fari Mujtahidi. Ja'fari Mujtahidi was a person, if I go into the fadail of just this man, you can come to understand who the servants of Ahlul Bayt actually are. Look, we don't have time to go into it, but I'm just going to mention one thing and I'm going to move quickly. Who's Ja'far Mujtahidi? Because I've not narrated this here, and this crowd is new, I'm going to narrate it for you, right? There's a person by the name of Dr. Tabatabai, who's still alive. Right? He used to be in Germany once upon a time. When he was studying his medicine in Germany, this is in the 1970s, or maybe in the early 80s, he was there studying medicine. He used to live closer to the north in Germany. And in winter, a lot of snow comes. It's a beautiful place, but there's a lot of snow. He was in his dorms, he says. He says, I was in my dorms and a letter comes. This letter, when I read it, was a letter by Ja'far Mujtahidi. There was no stamp on it. I was thinking, how is it? Because by that stage, Ja'far Mujtahidi had been paralyzed. So there was a side of him that didn't work properly. There's a story behind this as well. They say one day Ja'far Mujtahidi was walking. He came to realize that there was a young Sayyid boy by the name of Ali, who was sick, who was paralyzed, who was lying on a bed. Ja'far Mujtahidi came forward and he said that this young man shouldn't be there. Such a beautiful name. So he then turned around to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, cure him. From Alam and Malakut, the voice comes. He says, the only way we can cure him is if you take his illness. Are you ready to do that? He says, I'll take the illness, but cure this young man. This is why Ahlul Bayt loved him. He took the illness on. They say miraculously this young man recovers. Over a period of weeks or so, they say that Ja'far Mujtahidi was sick. All of a sudden, they say that he fell with stroke. And then after that, slowly he began to recover. If you look at the pictures, that beauty of Ja'far Mujtahidi in the last days is gone, because you could see that there's paralysis of his face. But anyway, the fact was he did recover to an extent. Ja'far Mujtahidi was that person who said to Sayyid al-Shuhada, he says, Mawla, when I die, I want to experience how you died. They say that when he was in the hospital for the final time, they wanted to do surgery on his throat. When they cut into it, blood started to come into his mouth, into his ear pipes. So he choked on his blood. They say he smiled because he remembered Hussein. Right, this is a malang of Imam Hussein, if I could use that term. Somebody whose every movement is Imam Hussein. Everything he wants. And here he prays. It's not easy to turn around to Allah and say, Allah, remove this person's illness and give it to me. It's not possible. Especially, and the reason why he did it, he said, this is Awlad al-Zahra. He used to feel for Awlad al-Zahra. So he asked Allah to do this. This is how you become the otad of the Imam. Anyhow, long story short is this. He says that the letter comes. When the letter is there, Tabatabai reads and he says, Dr. Tabatabai says, man, how is it possible Ja'far Mujtahidi is here? Because the letter said, I'm here, come and greet me. So he says, I'm in this place. So they say that he went there to see what the story was. When he got there, in the letter it also said, that I'm here, there's a young man who's sick, there's a woman, she's alone, come there. He says, when the address was given, it was snowing. He says, I went there was a bit of a hill. I couldn't get the car up the hill because there was so much snow. So when I stood there, I looked up and I saw Ja'far Mujtahidi was standing on top of the hill. And at that moment, he says, young man, say Ya Ali. He said, I said Ya Ali, somehow I got up to the top. When I got to the top, I went in the house. I saw in the house this woman was running around Ja'far Mujtahidi. Both of them couldn't speak each other's language. And there was a young boy sitting up as if he'd just recovered from sickness. So I asked her in German, I said, what's the story? She said, last night, I had enough. My husband has died, I don't have a husband. But I'm a believer. I was saying to Lady Mary, Mary, I only have one son. If you don't cure him and he dies because he had cancer and he was dying, I have nothing to live for. She said, I was doing tawassul of Mary with all of my heart and soul. She said, that night I saw a dream. Lady Mary came to me. I said, Mary, please, my son. She says, in this time I can't do anything. She said, but your son's the Masih. He raises the dead. Can you not raise my son? She said that in this day and age, Sahib-e-Amr is the 12th Imam and his mother Zahra. You appeal to Fatima to Zahra and you see what happens. She said, I began to appeal. She then says, she says, I asked Mary, but who is the Zahra? She says, Zahra's father is the final prophet. His name is Muhammad. Her son is Mehdi and her name is Fatima. In a dream she started to recite, Ya Muhammad, Ya Fatima, Ya Mehdi, Ya Muhammad, Ya Fatima, Ya Mehdi, Ya Muhammad, Ya Fatima, Ya Mehdi. She says, I got up, I had tears in my eyes. Just then there was a knock on the door. I opened the door. There was a man there. I said, are you the Mehdi? He says, no, I'm the servant of the Mehdi. He said, this man was Ja'far Mujtahidi. He walks in through the door. He goes directly into the room as if he knew my house. He put his hand under the back of my son. He recited a name. My son stood up. He said, Mother, I'm hungry. Bring me some food. And that's when you walked in. Dr. Tabatabai said, he says, I got up. I went to Ja'far Mujtahidi. He says, I know the three names. What was the fourth name? He says, son, when I went, I put my hand under the back of this young man. I said, Ya Ali, and he got up. Look, I'm hastening this discussion, otherwise I would have taken another 10 minutes in describing. Just bear this in mind, there are some people who are the helpers of the 12th Imam. Now all of this for one thing. Now you know who Ja'far Mujtahidi is now. Now let's look at what Ja'far Mujtahidi gives as a prescription. One person came to him, he said, Agha, I'm in difficulty, what should I do? You know what he replies? He says, between Tulu'ain for 9 days recite Ziyarat Al Yasin. There's a secret behind this dua. Dua Al Yasin revives the heart and brings the wilaya back in times of confusion and fitna. If you want to know how to increase the nur of your heart, Al Yasin is like talqeen. When you recite this as if you're in your grave reciting talqeen, that person who recites Ziyarat Al Yasin, you'll see that 12 Imams will come in their grave. Right, bear this in mind. So one of the things that you can do to open your heart to the nur of Ahlul Bayt is to recite the Ziyarat of Al Yasin. Look, tonight go and look. In fact, if tonight is too late, tomorrow just have a look. Browse through what Ziyarat Al Yasin is. Look at it and see, why is it a solution? It's a solution for all of your difficulties if you understand how to use it. People don't. It's in your books, but how many people have actually recited it? It's actually a very easy dua, is a ziyarah to recite. It's a very relaxing ziyarah, and it actually increases the ma'rifah for all of the 12 Imams. But the milakas recite it and see. So those people who've been coming, we have this issue, we have that issue. Between Tuluwain, but you've got to wake up for Fajr. Hey, Ja'far Mujtahidi is saying, recite Ziyarat Al Yasin and see. Okay, that was Ja'far Mujtahidi giving. Maybe try for 40 days and see what happens. So inshallah, we'll continue our discussion later. Look, time is not with us. There's much to say, and there's little time to say it in. Busy yourself in this Muharram, coming closer to Ahlul Bayt. As I said on day one, there'll be people saying things to create fitna. Don't fall into these things. What can you do? Start reciting Ziyarat ala Yasin. Start reciting Ziyarat Ashura. Within Ziyarat Ashura is the secret to Isma Azam. Inshallah tomorrow, we'd mentioned Sayyid Musa Zarabadi. I wasn't able to. Tomorrow inshallah we will do. We'll look at these things. If you look at Dua al-Qamar, these du'as have what in them? Wilayat of Ali, Wilayat of Hussein. Just read Dua al-Qamar and see. It's a Tawheedi dua. It's a dua which accepts your duas quickly in the kingdom of God. But if you look at the last parts, it's all about the Wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That tells you Wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen is like a key to all of your duas. Inshallah we'll continue it later. Inshallah we'll continue it later. Look, these nights are slowly leaving us. And these nights are heavy nights. You're the believers of Ahlul Bayt. You can see even when it was raining so badly today, even then you've come today. All the traffic, but you still come. Once these days go, Allah knows if next year we'll have an opportunity to come together. But nobody's been guaranteed. Therefore, the opportunity that you have, the best thing you can do is in your khalwas, cry for Imam Hussein. Today, you'll see that when that taboot of that yatim comes, unlike all of the other members of Karbala, this is not a taboot. This is a sack. It's like a bag. Right? What can I say? Honestly, it pains me. Tonight you're here to cry over a yatim. You ever seen a yatim? They say a yatim is a person who doesn't have a father. Let me say something to you. Imam Hassan is lying there. Poison is cutting his liver. Imam Hassan is moving on a bed. Imam Hussein is sitting there. Imam Hassan says, brother, bring me a bowl. He says, why? He says, I want to vomit. As he vomits, Imam Hassan says, brother, hide it. He says, why? He says, because Zainab is coming. As Imam Hassan is sitting there, tradition says, a 6-month-old baby is crawling. And as he crawls on top of the chest of his father. As he crawls, Farwa comes forward. She says, son, your father is in pain. Don't disturb your father. Imam Hassan hugs him. He says, Farwa, after today, my Qasim will become yatim. Let him rest on my chest. Let him rest on my chest. Look, I've said it, you've heard it, but I'm sure you haven't understood. Let me say it in another way. Let me say it in another way. Afterwards, the day of Eid came. They say every single father was taking their son towards prayers in Masjid al-Nabawi. They say a small boy, heavy-hearted, walked to Baqi. As he walked to Baqi, he stood in front of a grave. He said, Father, if only you were there, you would also have taken me by the hand and taken me to Eid. They say a mother feels the pain of a yatim more than anything. If a mother young loses a husband, then she puts everything into her son. The dream for her was one day my son would grow up. One day my son would get married. One day my son would have children. You can imagine. They say when the body of Imam Hassan was taken, eventually it was brought back again. Once Sayyidah Zainab was sitting there alone in a room. One by one she was plucking the arrows out of the body of her brother. And as she pulled it out, she would cry and she would remember her mother. She would say with difficulty, my mother raised this brother of mine. At that time she would look at the face of Qasim. Tears would come in her eyes. Look at this yatim, look at the innocence on his face. Look, time is going. I'm going to accelerate forward, only recite just one part. Inshallah, in the coming nights we'll recite more. One part is this. 9th of Muharram comes. As you know, every single mother was sitting with their sons. They say Qasim was sitting with Farwa. And Farwa was saying to Qasim, saying that tomorrow there's going to be a great battle. I want you to go out and to remember your father. Just remember, maybe Hussein may not give you permission. Why? Because you're the only sign left of his brother. But we'll ask him, we'll make sure that you gain permission. And they say when the day of Ashura does come, Imam Hussein is telling everyone what their maqam is going to be in heaven. Imam Hussein is saying, this is your maqam in heaven. They say Qasim comes forward. He says, uncle, have I got a maqam as well? Am I going to give my life as well? Imam replies, he said, Qasim, even Ali Asghar is going to give his life. They say Ghayrat Hashimi was such. He startles. He looks up and he says, uncle, tell me, are they going to come towards the tents to take Ali Asghar? Imam Hussein didn't want to reply. He just turns around and he says, no, I'm going to take Ali Asghar out. I'm going to take him out. They say, you know what the tradition says? They say that when Imam Hussein had been surrounded and Imam Hussein hits the floor, they say Umar ibn Sa'd says he was scared. He was saying, how do we know Hussein has died or not? And they say Shimr gets up and he says, attack Zainab and you'll see if Imam Hussein is alive or not. When all of the army go and attack Zainab, Hussein ibn Ali on his knees and on his elbows says, come and attack me. I'm still alive. If you're not Muslims, where's your ghaira gone? Look, I'm going to recite slowly. As these nights go on, I can see that your patience in taking the Masa'ib I saw last night is difficult for you. I'm going to recite slowly with breaks. Tradition says the day of Ashura now comes. One by one, each shaheed is going. Each shaheed is going and coming back. One Qasim is shaking. You could see Qasim wanted to go. Imam Hussein doesn't give him permission. A time comes, they say, when Farwa is sitting in the same tent as Sayyidah Zainab. Now imagine, when a mother hears the cry of a yatim, she gets up and she startles and she runs. They say all of a sudden she stands up and she says, Zainab, I can hear that my yatim is crying. Let me go and see. When she enters the tent, she sees Qasim had both of his arms around his knees like a child does. He had his forehead within his knees and he was sobbing. She says, son, what's happened? What bala has befallen? He replies, he says, mother, my uncle doesn't give me the ijazah to go and fight. Every time I go, he says, you're the only sign of my brother, and he doesn't allow me. At that moment, mother is startled. She doesn't know what to do. Then she remembers. She remembers when Imam Hassan was leaving this world. He'd written a ta'weez, he'd attached it onto the arm of Qasim. He said, when the biggest moment, the biggest problem comes for my son, the solution lies in this ta'weez. She says, what bigger problem than now? She opens up the ta'weez. She sees there was a letter. She smiles. She gives it to Qasim. Qasim smiles. He goes running. As he goes running, he goes to Imam Hussein. He says, Mawla, look at this. When he looks at it, you know what he sees? On that it says, Ya bunayya Qasim. Oh my son Qasim, إذا وجدت عمك الحسين غريبا وحيدا أدشانا مظلوما. He says, Qasim, when you see your uncle, when he's gharib, when he's waheed, when he's thirsty, go and give your life. At that moment, Imam Hussein begins to cry, looks towards Medina, says, even in this hour of ghurba, brother, you didn't forget me. Tradition says uncle and nephew cry so much, both of them fall on the ground. Say that Zainab comes forward, grabs both of them. They say that now when Qasim is going, Imam Hussein says to Abbas, Abbas, get armor so it can protect the body of Qasim. One armor comes, doesn't fit. Second armor come, doesn't fit. Third armor come, doesn't fit. At that moment Qasim says, I want to fight without armor, uncle. Tears in his eyes. Imam Hussein lifts Qasim, puts him on the horse, but the feet are too small, so he removes the saddle now. A young man is now standing on the horse. You know what he does? It says Imam Hassan takes the white parchment, puts it around his neck, like you do for a dead body. Taht al-Hadak goes. It's as if a dead body is now going to go on the plains of Karbala. And at that moment Qasim now goes and attacks. And as he goes, one person comes, he kills him. Second one comes, he kills him. 6 sons come, he kills him. They say a great champion come. Imam Hussein looks up. He says, Allah, the mother is watching. The child is small. Help him. Help him. So Qasim still kills him. But a time comes where a man comes from the back and hits Qasim on the back of the head. They say he begins to move on the horse. And as he moves on the horse, Imam Hussein and Abu al-Fadl Abbas both come into the battlefield. They say the son falls onto the ground of Imam Hassan, and as he falls, horses begin to trample. They say bits of Qasim begin to be trampled over, and as they begin, by the time Imam Hussein comes, he looks to the side, he sees the hand is there, he looks this way, another piece is there, he gets his abba and lays it on the ground, picks up the pieces of Qasim, gathers it together, says, brother, come and help me, your son's pieces have been shred all over the maqtal. When he grabs it on his back and comes back to his tent, Farwa gets up and he says, Zainab, I sent a 13-year-old boy. Look at these. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi.